She came in on a Tuesday, 67, former teacher, retired 2 years ago, and she was not frightened. She was angry at herself. She had gained no weight. Her diet was reasonable. She walked every morning, but her balance had become uncertain. Her arms looked thinner, and she could no longer open certain jars without help. She thought she had let herself go. She had not. Something quieter and more serious was happening inside her muscle tissue. It had a name. It had a mechanism. It had a solution. None of those 3 things had ever been mentioned at an appointment. Subscribe now and hit like. What follows is what that appointment should have included. The system is not built to tell you this. This channel is. What was happening to her had a name, sarcopenia. From the Greek, sarx meaning flesh, and penia meaning loss. Not an injury, not a disease in the conventional sense. A biological process that begins quietly in your 40s, accelerates after 60, and moves faster still after 70. The rate is specific, roughly 1 to 2% of total muscle mass per year. That sounds manageable until you compound it. Over a decade, that is 15 to 20% of your total muscle gone. And the body does not announce this with pain. It announces it with the kinds of changes my patient described. Things that were automatic becoming effortful. That is the signal. Most people miss it entirely. Here is why that matters far beyond strength or appearance. Muscle is not simply tissue that moves your limbs. It is a metabolic organ, and it performs functions no other tissue can fully replace. Muscle regulates blood sugar. Skeletal muscle is the primary site of glucose uptake in the human body. When you eat, insulin drives blood sugar into muscle cells for storage and use. Less muscle means less capacity for that uptake. Blood sugar stays elevated longer. The risk of type 2 diabetes, a condition where the body loses its ability to manage glucose properly, rises in direct proportion to muscle loss. Muscle stabilizes your joints. Every major joint, the knee, the hip, the lumbar spine, depends on surrounding muscle to maintain alignment under load. Cartilage does not stabilize joints. Muscle does. When that muscle thins, load distributes unevenly. Cartilage wears asymmetrically. The joint breaks down not because of age alone, but because the muscular architecture protecting it has quietly eroded. Muscle holds your posture upright. Dozens of deep, stabilizing muscles maintain constant, low-level contraction throughout the day to keep your spine in position. As those muscles weaken, posture collapses forward. The head drifts in front of the shoulders. The lower back compensates. Chronic pain follows and gets attributed to arthritis. The upstream cause is muscle loss. Muscle controls your balance. Maintaining balance while walking is not passive. It requires rapid, precise contractions from the ankle, the lower leg, the hip, and the trunk, happening in milliseconds, continuously, every time your weight shifts. When the muscles responsible for those corrections lose volume and speed, balance becomes unreliable. The hesitation on uneven ground, the instinct to reach for a railing. These are not minor inconveniences. They are a system beginning to fail. Muscle drives your metabolism. Muscle tissue is metabolically expensive. Even at rest, it burns calories simply to maintain itself. This is the primary reason basal metabolic rate, the number of calories your body uses just to stay alive, drops with age. Not because your organs slow dramatically, because the volume of metabolically active muscle tissue has decreased. The body that once burned efficiently now stores what it once burned. Lose enough muscle across enough of these systems, and everything downstream starts to fall apart. Not gradually and invisibly, visibly, functionally, in ways you feel every day. And here is the critical point. The 7 signs I am about to walk you through are not warnings that muscle loss might begin. They are signals that it already has. How would you know? What does it actually look like in your body, in your daily life, right now? That is exactly what we are going to go through. Because nobody at your next appointment is going to screen for these systematically.
The visit does not allow it. This conversation does. Sign number 1 is fatigue during activities that felt easy a year ago. Not the tiredness that follows genuine
exertion. Something different. A heaviness that arrives earlier than it used to. During tasks your body once handled without registering them as effort. Climbing one flight of stairs. Carrying groceries from the car. Walking through a large supermarket. These are not athletic events. When they begin producing significant fatigue, the explanation is almost never the heart or the lungs. The cardiovascular system is often still performing adequately. What has changed is the muscle doing the mechanical work. Less muscle tissue means each remaining fiber must contribute a larger share of the total effort. The activity has not changed. The tissue has. Sign number 2 is a noticeably slower walking pace. This one is easy to dismiss. People assume they are simply being more careful, taking their time. But gait speed is one of the most clinically studied markers of muscle health and physiological resilience in older adults. Research defines slow gait as a pace below approximately 0.8 meters per second, roughly the speed required to cross a standard intersection before the light changes. The muscles most responsible for a brisk walking pace are the quadriceps, the gluteal muscles, and the calf complex. When those muscles lose volume and contractile speed, the stride shortens, the pace drops. Gait speed is now used routinely as a predictor of hospitalization risk, fall risk, and functional decline. It is not a trivial observation. It is a direct window into the muscle tissue. Sign number 3 is difficulty rising from a chair without using your arms. This is one of the most reliable functional tests available, and you do not need a clinic to perform it. Sit in a standard chair, arms crossed over your chest, and stand. If you reach for the armrests before you are halfway up, if the movement requires a rocking motion to generate momentum, if it takes 2 attempts, your quadriceps are already significantly compromised. The sit-to-stand movement requires rapid force generation from a fully flexed knee position. That is precisely the movement pattern sarcopenic muscle struggles to produce. An unassisted chair rise does not allow compensation. It tells the truth immediately. Sign number 4 is a measurable decline in grip strength. Of all 7 signs, this one carries the most sobering clinical weight. Grip strength is one of the most consistently replicated predictors of all-cause mortality in adults over 60. More predictive than resting blood pressure in several large longitudinal studies. More predictive than cholesterol in some populations. Not because grip strength itself is the mechanism of death, because it functions as a proxy for the overall state of systemic muscle mass and neuromuscular integrity. Weak grip reflects weak muscle throughout the body, and weak muscle throughout the body is the upstream condition for frailty, metabolic dysfunction, fall-related fracture, and prolonged recovery from illness. Think about the tasks that require sustained grip. Opening jars, wringing out a cloth, holding a bag for several minutes, turning a stiff key. These tasks have not changed. If they are harder, the tissue has. 4 signs. Each one quiet enough to explain away. Each one easy to attribute to a bad week, a disrupted schedule, the general texture of getting older. The next 3 are harder to ignore. But before those, understand what connects all 4 signs above. They are not isolated symptoms. They are readings from the same underlying instrument, the muscle. Sign number 5 is increasing difficulty maintaining balance on one leg. Stand near a wall for safety, lift one foot a few inches off the ground, and hold the position. Adults with healthy neuromuscular function can typically hold this for 10 to 15 seconds without significant difficulty. If you waver immediately, if you reach for support within 3 or 4 seconds, the deficit is not primarily in your inner ear. It is in the muscles of the ankle, the lower leg, and the hip responsible for the rapid micro-corrections balance requires. Those corrections happen automatically. They require both strength and speed of contraction. Sarcopenic muscle loses both. Strength declines measurably. Contractile speed, the rate at which a fiber activates and generates force, declines faster. The result is a balance system too slow and too weak to catch small perturbations before they become falls. Sign number 6 is visible reduction in the circumference of the thigh and calf. People notice this and attribute it to weight change or fat redistribution. Sometimes that is partly true, but a reduction specifically in the mid-thigh or the widest point of the calf, independent of overall weight change, reflects a real reduction in muscle volume. The thigh contains the quadriceps and hamstrings, the two largest functional muscle groups in the lower body. The calf contains the gastrocnemius and soleus, the primary muscles responsible for propulsion during walking. When these areas visibly thin, it is not a cosmetic change. Every task those muscles perform, standing, walking, climbing, stabilizing the knee and hip, is now being performed by a reduced volume of tissue. Not less attractive tissue, less capable tissue. Write your age in the comments right now. I want to know exactly where you are so that future content on this channel addresses what you are facing at this specific stage. Every response helps. Sign number 7 is prolonged recovery time after minor physical effort. Not the soreness that follows an unusually hard workout, something different. A fatigue that persists for 2 days, sometimes 3, after an activity that should not have been demanding. A longer walk than usual, an afternoon of light gardening. A day of travel that involved more standing than sitting. What used to take 1 day to recover from now takes 3. The explanation sits at the intersection of reduced muscle volume and a compromised biological repair environment. Each remaining fiber worked closer to its maximum capacity during the effort, and the processes that restore muscle tissue afterward are operating inside a system that is actively working against them. That system has a name, and understanding it means looking not just at the signs, but at the 3 root mechanisms driving all 7 of them. Now that you can see what is happening, the question is why. These 7 signs share 3 compounding drivers. Knowing them is what makes reversal possible. The first driver is the decline of anabolic hormones. Testosterone, estrogen, growth hormone, and IGF-1, insulin-like growth factor 1, the primary mediator of growth hormones' effects on muscle tissue, are the hormonal signals that instruct the body to build and maintain muscle. After 60, circulating levels of all 4 drop substantially. Testosterone declines in both men and women. Estrogen loss following menopause removes a significant protective effect on muscle and bone simultaneously. Growth hormone secretion decreases in a measurable, well-documented pattern. The combined result is that the anabolic signal, the biological instruction to preserve muscle, grows progressively quieter. The body is not ignoring the muscle. It is simply receiving a weaker command to maintain it. The second driver is inadequate protein intake. This is the one that surprises people most. The assumption is that protein is something athletes worry about. The clinical reality is different. The dietary reference most people are familiar with, 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight per day, was established as a minimum to prevent deficiency in healthy young adults. It was never designed as a target for preserving muscle mass in an aging body. The evidence-based recommendation for adults over 60 is substantially higher, between 1.2 and 1.6 grams per kilogram of body weight per day. For a person weighing 70 kilograms, That is between 84 and 112 grams of protein daily. Most adults over 60 consume significantly less than that, and most have never been told the actual clinical target. Not because the evidence is unclear, because the information does not reliably travel through routine care. The protocol exists. The evidence is unambiguous. The appointment simply does not carry it to you. Equally important is distribution. Muscle protein synthesis, the process by which the body builds new muscle tissue, is most efficiently triggered when protein arrives in adequate doses at each meal, not concentrated in a single large serving. A protein-heavy dinner does not compensate for a protein-light breakfast and lunch. Each meal is either an opportunity to trigger synthesis or a missed one. The amino acid leucine plays a specific role in initiating that synthesis signal. Leucine-rich sources include eggs, fish, chicken, legumes such as lentils and chickpeas, and dairy. Accessible, affordable, and clinically effective when consumed consistently and at adequate amounts across the day. The third driver is chronic, low-grade inflammation, a condition researchers now call inflammaging, a compound of inflammation and aging. Unlike the acute inflammation that follows an injury, inflammaging produces no fever, no visible swelling, no acute pain. What it produces is a sustained elevation of inflammatory signaling molecules that directly interfere with muscle protein synthesis and accelerate muscle protein breakdown. This is the biological environment sign number 7 was pointing toward. Prolonged recovery after minor effort is partly inflammaging, slowing the repair process and tipping the balance between breakdown and rebuilding toward breakdown. The three drivers do not operate independently. Lower anabolic hormones reduce the efficiency of protein utilization. Inflammaging blunts the muscle-building signal that adequate protein would otherwise trigger. The deficit compounds quietly over years while the 7 signs accumulate. But here's what the evidence is also clear on. Unlike most age-related processes, this one is substantially reversible. At any age, with the correct protocol. 3 interventions, each specific, practical, and accessible without specialized equipment. Progressive resistance training, 2 to 3 times per week, targeting the large muscle groups of the lower body and trunk. Progressive means the load increases gradually as capacity improves. Not lifting heavy from the first session, simply ensuring the stimulus continues to challenge the muscle. Because muscle adapts only to what it is repeatedly asked to do, and stops adapting the moment that demand stops increasing. Bodyweight exercises, resistance bands, and machines all qualify. 2 to 3 sessions per week is the minimum effective dose. 1 session is not. The signal is too weak. The body adapts only to what repeats. Protein distributed across all meals at 1.2 to 1.6 grams per kilogram of body weight per day, with deliberate inclusion of leucine-rich sources at each sitting. Eggs at breakfast, fish or legumes at lunch, a protein-adequate dinner. Not a temporary adjustment, a permanent recalibration of how the body receives its primary building material for muscle tissue. Weighted vest walking. A vest adding 5 to 10% of body weight, worn during ordinary daily walks, applies mechanical load to the skeleton and the muscles of the lower body and trunk without the impact stress of running or the complexity of structured gym exercise. It improves bone density alongside muscle stimulus. Joint safe, adjustable, and requiring no facility. For adults not yet ready for structured resistance training, it is an effective and evidence-supported starting point. Left unaddressed, sarcopenia is the direct upstream cause of frailty, loss of functional independence, increased fracture risk, and progressive metabolic dysfunction. Those are not abstract future risks. They are the destinations this process moves toward, predictably, in people who do not intervene. But the window does not close, it narrows. It does not close. Subscribe to this channel. Leave a like on this video. Nobody in a clinic is going to sit with you and walk through what muscle loss actually means for your body and your independence. That is not how the system is built. It is built around treatment, not prevention. That is exactly why this channel exists.